The global energy market is currently crashing under the weight of sudden, catastrophic disruptions to worldwide shipping lanes, and you are already seeing the undeniable proof of this crisis at the pump. Gasoline prices are shooting up globally as the ripple effects of these shipping delays reach consumer markets. This map shows the Strait of Hormuz. The world consumes 100 million barrels of oil daily, and a fifth relies on this bottleneck. But war has completely paralyzed shipping through this channel, instantly knocking 10% of the world's supply offline. The sheer speed and scale of that supply deficit has pushed the U.S. government into an every barrel counts panic. To keep the market afloat, Washington is now making choices no one saw coming. In the middle of an active conflict with Iran, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced that the U.S. is lifting sanctions on Iranian oil. This is a highly specific short-term pass. The authorization allows for the immediate sale of Iranian oil, but it expires in just a few weeks on April 19th. It also applies exclusively to crude oil and petroleum products of Iranian origin that are already loaded onto vessels and stranded out at sea. The calculation is straightforward. The U.S. needs oil so badly that letting an adversary sell its stranded barrels is considered an acceptable risk to prevent a global market collapse. Right away, this waiver adds about 14 million barrels of currently stranded oil to the global supply. Before the conflict, the primary buyer for all this Iranian crude was China. They were scooping up the barrels at a steep discount because international sanctions made it illegal for most other countries to purchase them. The Treasury Department wants to deliberately cut off that cheap sanctions supply pipeline to Beijing. Instead, the U.S. hopes to divert these stranded supplies to allies who desperately need energy right now, like India, Japan, and Malaysia. By taking those discounted barrels off the table, the policy is designed to force China to buy its oil at full market price, removing a massive economic advantage. On paper, this targets two goals at once. It provides energy to allies while removing a significant economic advantage for a rival superpower. But maritime compliance experts are calling this strategy, quote, bananas. The waiver Bessent issued lacks any detailed rules on where the money goes. There is no clear mechanism in place to prevent the revenue from these massive sales from flowing straight back to the Iranian government. By allowing these barrels to hit the open market, the U.S. inadvertently delivers a massive cash influx to the exact regime they're attacking. When reporters pressed President Trump on this contradiction, he offered no clear answer, stating only that they would do whatever is necessary to keep prices down. The U.S. is now actively engaged in a conflict, while simultaneously authorizing the oil sales that fund their opponent's military, all in a desperate pursuit of economic stability. So, does making this massive geopolitical compromise actually translate to significantly lower prices for consumers? This visualization compares the newly released supply against global demand. 140 million barrels sounds massive, but the world burns through 100 million barrels every single day. That means this entire stranded fleet covers less than 36 hours of normal global consumption. Because the volume is so small relative to the daily deficit, analysts predict this waiver will barely move the needle on soaring global energy prices. The economic payoff is highly uncertain, making the extreme political risks taken to acquire it seem entirely disproportionate. These efforts follow a similar suspension of sanctions on Russian oil enacted last week. European leaders immediately criticized the decision, arguing that allowing Russian oil back onto the market directly strengthens Vladimir Putin's regime and prolongs the war in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the physical threats to production are only escalating. Recent tit-for-tat attacks on vital gas fields operated by Iran and Qatar mean the actual capacity to pull fossil fuels out of the ground could be constrained for years, even if the current conflict ends quickly. The world's energy infrastructure is deeply interconnected, remarkably fragile, and easily held hostage by regional conflicts. Governments are trapped making impossible choices, sacrificing long-term global security and funding their own adversaries, merely to keep the lights on.